Hello everyone, my name is Arpan Pari and I'm also known as Being Tech Savvy. Welcome to today's episode at Tech&Talk. In the 8th episode today, we have with us a very special guest, Derek Kim. Derek works in the iOS ecosystem and is a renowned self-taught developer who has gone through an untraditional way into the world of iOS development. Derek, I'm glad that you could make it here to the podcast today, and I'm really profounded by the insights that you're going to share today. How are you feeling today, Derek?
Hey, Arpan, thanks so much for having me. I'm a little nervous, but I'm really excited to share what I have to say. Yeah, so please feel free to ask me any questions.
Yeah, so ask talking about questions, let's jump right into the topic. So the first question that I have for Derek is like I was just analyzing his profile and he has made a bunch of really cool projects into iOS development. And I just wanted to ask like what's your tech journey like? Like in today's world when everyone is talking about the software jobs been taken by AI, what was your approach like into coming into the iOS development?
Yeah, well, when I actually decided to start my tech journey, there weren't really anything like ChatGPT or anything AI related stuff. What really got into me is that I've always thought building software or building technology is for some other geniuses, but my older brother in South Korea, who actually had a different career, he actually decided to quit his job and decided to study software development. And seeing him put in a lot of effort actually triggered me and say, I thought maybe if I put in a decent effort, like a lot of effort, maybe I could do it too. And that's when I actually decided to kind of get my interest in software development. And kind of funny story, a friend that I've met online gaming called League of Legends. Yeah, it actually turns out that he's actually an Android developer working for Google.
Oh,
So I kind of talked to him and said, I have this interest in software development. How can I start? And of course, he's from Google, so he suggested me to learn Flutter, where you can build both Android and
cross-platform.
iOS. Yeah, cross-platform technology. So I thought that was really a good starting point. So I decided to, self-teach myself how to build Flutter apps. So that's when I actually, went a lot of different resources like YouTube, a Korean learning platform, and everywhere to learn about Flutter development. But that brings up a question. How did I end up becoming an iOS developer when I started with Flutter development, right? So I'm actually in Canada right now. In Canada, when I was looking for jobs as Flutter developer, there weren't whole lot of paid opportunities for Flutter development. A lot of the companies already had their apps built natively, so with Swift and Kotlin. And mostly the companies that were looking for Flutter developers were mostly startups. They needed to build apps quickly. They had to have some sort of apps, but they can't spend a lot of money, or they don't even have money at all to spend on developers. So it was mostly a volunteer positions. So I volunteered for two different companies, one for over a year, but it wasn't really getting anywhere because I had to make a living. So then I thought I would like to learn native coding because there were a lot of demands. So I had to choose between Android and iOS,
Yeah.
right? And I actually had MacBook. I had an iPhone and I had iPad. I wasn't a huge fan of Apple back then, but I had so many Apple products, so I thought to myself, why don't I give iOS development a try?
Mhm.
So then I immediately went on Udemy. I took some courses. Some of the courses I took were, you know, uh, there's a course called iOS Bootcamp on Udemy too by Dr. Angela. There's also really good courses by Jonathan Rasmussen. He teaches about iOS development. auto layout, things like that. I also took courses from Roland, who also has really, really good iOS development content, and thought, hey, this is actually really, really nice. I really like iOS development. So then, I decided to go to a boot camp to
Mhm.
actually learn a lot more deeper about
Mhm.
iOS development. And that's how I've actually became an iOS developer.
Well, that's a really inspiring story. So, moral number one from your journey is like is that play League of Legends and find really good friends. So, yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's actually really inspiring, from like figuring out the demand on the market. I mean, many times developers just love the part of developing so much that they forget about the economic and the money side of it. So I think
Mhm,
that's one very important point that you made about seeing what is the demand in the market and how you can adapt to the demand. For example, like in your case, in Canada, mostly it was
mhm,
a suitable environment for iOS ecosystem. But in countries like India, where we have the majority of devices in Android, maybe someone would
mhm.
pursue Android development. So it is, I think, subjective and case dependent. But rightly, you said that being in cross platform, development will attract the opportunities from a startup because they want to just build and deploy the applications to show the performance and the just the starting work or the head start that they get from deploying the applications matters to them. So that's a really
Mhm.
good point that you made. So, like moving on from
Right.
there, you said that you volunteered for a long amount of time there, like it was an
Mhm.
unpaid internship. So, like from there to now, do you still think that iOS development is in high demand, especially in Canada? Because like right now, I am hearing that the recession is going around the world and it has like grasped mostly the tech companies. So
Mhm.
every day we heard about like new layoffs or new, firings are being done every day. So, what do you think about the
Right.
situation currently, and how safe it is for self-taught developers, especially those who don't have a degree, to step into this market?
Right. Yeah. I think that's a really good question. To speak on a point of view in Canada, and also I'll kind of include United States as well. It seems like iOS development is still in high demand, like very high demand. Not just iOS development particularly, but because there are a lot of people that uses iOS devices, I still think it's really, really high. But at the same time, I also believe it doesn't really matter like where you particularly live, because you're not just going to, unless if it's required specifically, you're just not going to develop an app to be deployed in America or in Canada specifically. It will go worldwide, right?
Yeah.
So even in Canada, even in United States, there will be a lot of demand for Android developers. There will be a lot of demand for iOS developers, and as long as the Apple company doesn't run out of business,
Yeah.
they will keep making good hardwares, and they
Mm.
will keep making the iOS or even Vision Pro. Like they will have some sort of operating system that are evolving, right? So I think it's still high demand, and I think it'll still stay that way. And for people that are considering iOS development a try, I think it's worth a try. But I do believe that right now, mentioning all the layoffs going on, I still think there is more demand for experienced iOS developers rather than
Mm.
entry level developers.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean you can't start. There's always room for opportunities.
Right. Yeah, I do agree with you what you said. Like
Hmm.
right now, not in iOS only, even in any
Hmm.
field you go and you search on LinkedIn for a job role, it displays the entry level, like the jobs are like
Hmm.
1/5 or even 1/7 of what they are assigned for the senior level or experience level roles. So I think yes, there is a visible
Right.
crunch in the market right now for the entry level or the newbies starting out in the journey. But I think it with the experience they will soon know, or they will soon adapt to the changes that are happening, or they will soon gain the experience. So the only thing that matters is like getting started. Yeah. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, talking about like you told about uh, there are actually opportunities in the iOS development. Would you like to share like a path which they could follow, or a personal roadmap that you followed and which they could actually refer to learn it?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I can definitely share what I did. Before I say this though, there is no right or wrong answers in, personal path or anything. You just have to follow what makes sense for you. But I hope what I did helps, people that are trying to start this career path.
Mhm,
So, like all the other development, I started out with, learning about fundamentals of Swift, the programming language itself, trying to get used to all the syntaxes, but you don't have to memorize it, of course. You just have to know, oh, this is this, and this is like this is a loop, this is a property, things like that. You just have to get used to it. I repeatedly practiced a lot in Xcode Playground. It's just a
mhm,
compiler where you can play around with a lot of different things.
mhm,
And then once I was kind of comfortable with the syntaxes, I jumped into iOS development. I first started out with UI Kit. It's a framework to develop iOS apps, but I don't really prefer the follow along tutorials, like where instructors are, showing you how to build this app. They would just show the code and you
mhm.
just type the code that they're typing, right?
Oh,
I don't really prefer them
it's
because
like tutorial hell. It's There's a term called tutorial hell.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I take those courses, I often see myself, just typing what they're typing without actually understanding, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, what I did was when I was taking the courses on Udemy, um, when I learned about one thing, I would stop the course and I would actually try to build something on my own. And to give specific example, like in UI Kit, you would learn how to, create a text view. You would learn how to build a button. You would learn how to insert image, things like that. So as soon as I learned that, I created this really, really simple counter app where you had text view showing 0. If you press the button, it would increase the counter by
Mhm,
1.
mhm.
Things like that, playing around it.
Yeah.
And I would do this continuously. So when someone takes like 3 to 4 weeks to complete a course, for
Huh?
me, it would take 3 to 4 months to
Oh,
complete a course.
oh.
Yeah, because I actually wanted to absorb all the information I could um, to use for my
Mhm,
own development, right?
mhm. Yeah,
So
so
yeah, mhm.
did you actually build any sort of mini projects with the concepts that you learned? Because you said like 3 to 4 months. So did you actually get hands-on experience by what you want to say, right?
Yeah, well, so when I was learning courses, those are all mini, mini, mini projects, very small. Like it's just one view, right?
Yeah,
You're just playing around with it.
yeah.
But when those things add up, like you can actually use each little things combined to make a real world project, is what I meant.
Okay, okay, that's actually
Mhm.
interesting. But if someone doesn't know, you can just check out his LinkedIn where he showcases all of the magnificent projects that he had made. So if you want to also build that set of magnificent projects, you should actually try to absorb as much as you can, like he did. So yeah, moving on, like moving on to like the next topic, Derek, I have always been intrigued by the iOS ecosystem and its relationship with open source. Many of the times iOS ecosystem is blamed for not having much opportunities in open source, as compared to the Android ecosystem, because Android is literally built upon the open source ecosystem. So what do you have to say in this? And those who actually want to try out and experiment with contributing to open source and getting started in iOS, do you have any such repositories or any tips and tricks to get started in that?
Yeah, so before I say anything, I actually myself haven't really had a lot of experiences with open sources, although I would really, really love to get started one. I've always had this passion of creating my own open source so that a lot of developers can use. But to give you some examples of starting points, one of the open source apps that I always mention to a lot of different people is this something called Semantic UI demos. So this open source apps is only available in GitHub, I believe. You can use that, and it would have all the list of components or text or font colors, everything that you could use natively in
Mhm,
iOS development.
mhm,
And these are the things that you should get ideas from. How can I make open source that are interesting or that are useful for other people's iOS development? And how
mhm.
can I make their development easier, right?
Yes, yeah.
How can I solve their problem, right?
Mhm,
But these are the things that usually, in my personal opinion, it's usually comes from your own problem. So when
mhm,
you were
mhm.
building this one app, you had this problem, you tried to make it easier.
Yeah,
And I created this method that, you just call it and it's a problem solved, right?
yeah.
So building on upon your own problem to
Mhm,
create an open source is actually a really great starting point.
mhm,
And I also wanted to share this uh, GitHub repository. It's called Open Source iOS Apps.
mhm.
It lists all of the existing open source iOS apps or projects that you can contribute on.
Really?
And yeah, and one of the things that I always wanted to mention, a lot of people kind of have this misconception of, well, if you want to contribute to an open source project, you have to be really, really experienced and you have
Mhm.
to put up a really good quality code. But I don't believe that's always the case.
Yeah.
Um, and you don't have to be afraid of, ruining their project, because you will always be reviewed and filtered out if it doesn't meet the standard.
Mhm,
And it doesn't always have to be coding contribution too, right? You can help them set up a good documentation. You can
mhm,
try to do a quality assurance work, and issue and submit an issue, or
mhm.
ask for improvement, things like that. So don't be afraid to start one. It's not about how much work or good
Mhm.
quality. It's not about that. It's about starting and actually doing it.
Yeah, a very well put point actually, because the person sitting in front of you did his first open source contribution as a documentation for the cloud security platform, Paladin Cloud. So yeah,
That's
the thing
awesome.
is that open source actually boosts your confidence that you can actually contribute to the real world projects. Even though when
Hmm.
you go to the interviews, job interviews, you can always mention your contributions in open source as a legit way to showing the proof of
Hmm.
work. If you just have some projects and on top of that you have some contributions, that will actually like there is two-factor authentication. It will work as a two-factor authentication for your skills, so it is really good if you can achieve that. And thank you, Derek, because I myself didn't
Hmm.
knew about those iOS repositories about iOS. So I always thought
Hmm.
that iOS, because it was proprietary, it always had everything closed up and no one from outside could actually contribute anything to it. So yeah, thank you very much for that. One question that
Hmm.
I had in mind was that like uh, we know that the West is a more evolved ecosystem when it comes to hiring, and nowadays the things are changing in terms of hiring. But
Hmm.
what was your experience with being not having a university's level CS degree or not having a CS degree in general? What was your experience by being self-taught? I mean, it's sure you gain more insights and knowledge as compared to the other CS grads who just clinged on to the degree. But I wanted to ask, like, what was the job and work in ecosystem around you was molded like? How you were treated in interviews, or like, was there any sort of partiality done to the people who don't have like the degrees and stuff?
Right. Yeah. So like to share my experience of, job hunting stage, where I
Mhm.
was looking for work, um, I would be really, really discouraged because every single job description would require a computer science degree or similar work experience, like
Mhm.
4 years for entry. I still applied to every single one of them, even though I didn't have a computer science degree. One thing I learned from that is that it never hurts you to
Mhm.
apply for jobs that are, you're a little underqualified, I guess, to put it in a term.
Mhm.
But the return of that, I used to count every single application I made. I would count every single resumes that I've sent, but I kind of stopped doing that once I reached 1,000 mark. So um,
Really?
I applied for more than 1,000 jobs, like throughout a year and a half, I guess. But uh, what was more important is that my resume wasn't really in a good condition. Like
Mhm.
it wasn't in a good quality. I guess to
Mhm.
put it in a word. I continuously edited my resume. Even though I didn't have work experience, I included my volunteer experience. I included the activities that I did, attending mini hackathons in my area or projects that I was proud of. And I've also included images of the projects that I've made in my resume. I would have this one-page formal resume, and I would have all the app screenshots beneath the resume to show that I can actually build apps. And once I started doing that, I started to get a little positive feedbacks from recruiters saying that my resume was kind of standing out compared to other, even with computer science degree,
Mhm.
they
Yeah.
wouldn't, they would just have one page text style resume,
Mhm.
and that was the difference that I made to kind of stand out. And by that, I started to get some interview requests. You know, and recruiters were saying, complimenting, hey, you do have different style resume, and
Yeah.
that kind of stood out.
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, it reminds me of that meme that we saw, no, in the internet, where there are two types of carrots. The first one has a very
Mm-hmm.
deep root and a small
Mm-hmm.
offshoot, but the second one has a very small root but has a larger offshoot. So I think you
Mm-hmm.
come in the first category, and I mean, it's all your hard work, man. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations for it. So yeah,
Thank you.
could you just like guide us through what are the some best job boards or resources for Android developers to find opportunities that you encountered within your thousand application search?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think the call just kind of dropped a little bit, but yeah.
Mhm.
So for regardless of your positions, I think it would be pretty similar. I'll kind of go through the popular ones, and I'll kind of go through like less popular, but it is still widely used. So I hate to say it, but LinkedIn and Indeed has been my best friend
Mhm.
for my job hunting process. I say that I hate it because like every single entry level job positions would require 3+ years of work
Yeah,
experience.
yeah,
And even if you use the filtering system where you're looking for entry level or internship, there would be mostly filled with senior positions.
yeah.
So the filtering system doesn't really work. But one thing that I used a lot is when you use the search bar on LinkedIn from your feed page, I would use this quotation method to find job postings. I
Mhm.
think they also call it query searching. But
Mhm.
if you do quotation job title and quotation
Uh,
location like
yeah.
Canada.
Yeah, we have seen that in
Yeah,
the reel, right? They have the title and then they have a column.
exactly.
Yeah, great, great.
Yeah. I actually did that a lot.
Uh-huh.
And what does that do for you? So it would actually show you all the postings that have your job title, your location, and hiring postings.
Uh,
And I would mostly skip the postings that have like a list of job titles.
mhm.
Please comment if you want to, if you want to get a profile reviewed, right? I would skip those. But when you see a posting from engineering manager, hiring
Mhm.
manager, recruiters, I would actually reach out to them. I would send a personal note connect request.
Mm,
By personal note, I mean you do have 200 letters you can include. It's so short, but you have to make an impression.
yeah,
Hey, introduce yourself. My name is Derek. I'm a passionate iOS developer. I
yeah,
do this and that. I would love to connect.
yeah.
Those little things really make a difference. And I was able to get a lot of referrals doing that and get an
Mm,
interview experience.
mm. Yeah, actually, that makes a really good point. Mainly
Mhm,
like people do what is like they just apply to the job board or from the careers website and they are just there stop.
mhm,
But they don't understand like the
mhm,
main thing about the job hunt is that you're building connections. You're building human connections with the people who work in an organization. So if you know the people
right.
well, if you get to know, if you bond with the people well who work there, then you can sort of estimate what the work environment will be when you get hired into that organization. So that's a very
Exactly.
good point that you have put out, Derek. So yeah,
Mhm,
looking forward, I think iOS development has come a long way, like from the first iPhones that came, and the ecosystem has changed in such a way that the demand is constantly increasing. More apps are built every day
mhm,
on the iOS because more people are buying it. So where do
mhm.
you see the future of iOS development heading in the next few years? Because nowadays, not only in smartphones, it is also going to be coming in wearables, or the you talked about uh the wearable, like what was it?
Vision
Uh,
Pro, I think. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry,
No
Vision Pro. So
worries.
where do you see the future of it actually heading up?
Yeah, um to long story short, I don't think it's going anywhere for a few years. A lot of I mean, everyone's using phones. It's about mobile ecosystem. Vision Pro is, getting a lot of attention, although it's only
Mm,
available in the United States right now. But
mm,
the conversion from iOS apps to Vision Pro, I heard it's really, really simple. It's not too complex. So I think with all these evolution going on, there is iOS development isn't going anywhere.
mm,
But one thing that I always keep in mind with all this AI hypes, I do think that as a developer, you should always be aware of the trend that is going on in software development. You should always, have some sort of interest in AI, how you can use available resources to improve your development
mm,
efficiency,
mm,
productivity, things like that. I always think you should keep an eye on and
mm.
keep evolving yourself, I guess.
Yeah, completely makes sense, when like for a vintage context, if we take the people who rode horses, some of them say they lose their jobs when the cars came. But no, the
Yeah.
cars didn't steal their job. The people who drove the cars actually stole their job. So I think it's
Mhm.
just a leverage that we can use to upskill ourselves in the technical generation that we live today, which is evolving rapidly year by year. And like within a decade we have seen so much that we had not seen in a century. So that is a really good point you made, Derek. Congratulations, we
Yeah.
have actually come to the end of the podcast. How was your experience with the podcast today, and is there anything else would you like to point out or would you like to say to the iOS developers that are going to get started today? Because in India we have a large
Mhm.
pool of people who want to get started into app development, and I think iOS development poses a great opportunity for them because of the increasing trend that will be coming in the future.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, thanks again for having me in this podcast. I'm really really happy to share what I have to say. But I did have one thing that I wanted to share. You know, a lot of people, not just for iOS developers, you know, people who wanted to start software development, there's a lot of fear going on, you know, with all this AI evolution. You know, they're going to take our job. You know, the AI engineer Devin, he came out.
Yeah.
You know, but I kind of think differently because when I started, and within a couple of months, GitHub Copilot came out. When I was studying iOS development, ChatGPT came out. Um, was I scared? Yeah, of course. I was really, really scared that I wouldn't be able to even start. But there's still so many companies that require developers. They're not going to rely on AI itself because it's still on its way. It's still stabilizing. So what's really important is that don't be afraid, but
Mm,
just focus on what you have to do right now.
mm,
Do a lot of projects, contribute to open source,
mm,
build things that you really really admire. Start with the things that you have problems with,
mm.
and I think if you focus on your own stuff, when an opportunity comes, you are able to get that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some really good stuff actually. Thank you, Derek. You really inspired me today about non choosing from a untraditional path and then going directly into the one of the most competitive zones in the development area. So thank you for having your presence here today. And those who want to get connected with Derek and get mentorship or get guidance from him about your career paths into iOS development, I have mentioned the in social links in the description. Do check it out, and you can feel free to message or to reach out to him for guidance. And I think Derek is such a sweet guy that he'll help you. Thank you everyone for
Thank you.
tuning. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this podcast. I hope you like this. If you like this podcast, like, share, and subscribe. And I think we will be having a next episode very soon. And Derek, it is not the last episode that we're having together. I'm sure there's a lot of and tons of episode that has to become in the future with us together, discussing on different topics. I think we have left out AI in this podcast. Let us cover it in next one. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.